So the next big event that comes up in Scripture is in Genesis 3, what uh, Christians generally refer to as the fall. Um, Again, just like the last story, many of you who are watching will probably know quite a bit about this, but I'm going to try to add a little bit on about some of the things that happen in Genesis 3. Um, so the basic story goes that the deceiver, the accuser, uh, comes to Eve in the Garden of Eden, and tricks her, saying, "If you eat of the apple, you'll become like God, knowing good and evil." Um, Now it's interesting to know that he wasn't entirely lying with that. I think it's interesting to think about the role of the enemy in Scripture, whereas he often, probably all the time, thinks that he's doing what's right. But we ultimately know that God has a more ultimate plan, which we'll see starting with Abraham. Um, so, but as we go through the story, Eve also feeds the apple to Adam. And when that happens, both of their eyes are opened and they now know between good and evil. They also, interestingly, the first thing that they recognize is that they're both naked. So that is exactly when shame enters the world. Shame is probably best definition is things we think are wrong about ourselves. It's the things that we are ashamed about. So it's interesting that shame comes in first. Sin is also going to come into the world when God encounters them, but it I find it interesting that often we only talk about sin in Christian circles and trying to cut away sin when we very rarely talk about trying to cut away shame. Just an interesting note. So going forward, though, afterwards, they have now had their eyes opened, and God comes into the garden. In the garden, they were in perfect communion with God, and they literally walked alongside God. God comes into the garden, though, and asks them three questions. This is going to be a main topic in the Genesis video that I do. The three questions are, where are you? Who told you? And did you eat the fruit? Notice God doesn't come in guns a-blazing right away. He actually comes in with a real curiosity about what has happened. He cares about what has happened to his creatures, the creatures that he deemed very good. I think often it's very easy to see it as just right away he condemns them and shames them, but God is not adding on to shame. God never gives shame. He's coming in it with a curiosity. Afterwards, he speaks to the serpent, to the woman, and to the man. He then talks about, so for the man and woman, he pretty much talks about the sin that enters the world, the things that they will have to go through because of that, woman having pain in childbirth and things such as that, men having to work and toil, all of those types of things. But he also addresses the serpent. And what's a really interesting thing here is already he prophesies about Jesus. From the absolute beginning, God already had this saving plan for us. So that's the part that says, I'll put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head and you will strike his heel. So striking his heel is going to look forward to the cross, whereas Jesus destroys death. So he strikes the serpent's head whereas the serpent only strikes his heel. Important things about the fall. We originally lived in communion with God, and now through the fall, we live disconnected. It says that we get thrown east of Eden. This is kind of a phrase that we can use, meaning where we've been disconnected from God. We now have more distance from God. We don't walk right with him, and our relationship with him ebbs and flows. Our communion with him ebbs and flows, and that is how life works in the nowadays and everything like that. Luckily, God cared so much about his very good creation that he is going to go forward with a saving plan for us, and that is going to be what the next video coming up about the Abrahamic covenant is going to be all about. But we have one more covenant to cover in between there, which is the covenant to Noah.